Hey, hope you've been enjoying the videos so far. So we're going to take a quick detour to make these somewhat interesting so that way everyone's not bored. So today we're going to feature this front side switchblade. So that's pretty cool. I don't know, it could be illegal, but who cares? They're really cool. So what you do is you push this cool little button and the blade comes out. So you got to be careful. Maybe you don't want to play this with kids, but I just thought that would be a fun thing to show everyone. So you never know what you're going to get on this show. So, but now we can get into web development. So we'll talk about that. All right. So let me share my screen here, and we'll get into it. So I hope you like that. We'll have fun things throughout these videos. So keep everyone's interest. So what we're going to talk about today is how to get our full width header back in place and kind of some of our layouts and some options we have. So one thing I didn't mention in our last video was when we get into mobile views, you can see that our container hits and butts up right against the edge of our browser. And that'll do the same thing for our phones. And it doesn't look great with the text and images. Sometimes it'll work good with different background colors and such, but we don't really want our text right up against it. So how do we do that? How do we fix this? So one thing that we want to add on our row is some padding on the side. And like we talked about, so we've got the top and bottom will be 0 pixels. And then what I like to do is add about 20 pixels of padding on the side. So we had our 500 width container. Now, if we can see here, it's 540 pixels. So adding that 20 pixels on the left and the right will, total 40. So that's why we're having 540 there. So now if we start to shrink this down, once we've hit that max width of 500, it won't matter, but now we've got that nice space there. So now it's up to you. If you don't want 20 pixels, great, 15, 10, however small you'd like. I just find that the skinnier I go, it is sometimes a little bit harder when the content's right up against it. But again, that's an opinion, and you can do what you feel looks best for you. So I like that. Now, we're not going to have 500 pixels. I prefer using 1140 grid, and then the 20 pixels on either side will take it out to a full 1180. However, everything inside of it, so if we were to look right here, we still have that 500 pixels from previously. So if we save that, now this is obviously the size that the browser's at. So I have to go clear out here so we can see that 1140. There's the 1140 in my content, and then the row will total 1180. So not too important, but we're seeing that because we've got this background color here. And typically you won't see that unless you've added background color. But what we want is the background color actually to the full width of the browser, and we just want all of our content to be in our nice, neat grid. So how do we do that? Well, we basically have to write another class and another element to put that class on. So again, we've got our header, we've got our main and footer. What we want to do is wrap all this with the div. And in this case, we're going to actually move our row here. So that's our container. And then our header is actually what will have the background. So we can call this header, if we want. That's fine. All right, so let's see what that did. Did that do anything? Not yet. We just need to move our background color on our header and take it off of our global rows. And because our global rows are going to be everywhere, and we don't really want that row color on all of our rows that we make, because we're going to want this content in the row too, so that way it lines up here. So how would we do that? Let's take a look. So here's our knives. We just want that same thing here. It's going to be a div, and we're going to have a class of global row. Now it kicks that over. Now we've got our padding, and everything's starting to line up really nicely. And then when we go bigger, you can see that we've hit the max width. And even though we can't see that, we can kind of hover over that, so you got that there. So that's nice. So now let's start learning some of the layouts. So I don't know how deep I need to go into each of these details. because I don't know exactly my target audience just yet and the skill level that they're at. So rather than try to deep dive into all these different aspects, let's just cover it really quickly. It's going to be new. It's going to be maybe weird and different. That's okay. I'm going to provide some resources for where we can go to learn more about these types of CSS layouts. So what we want to do, we've got our logo, but we want to get this navigation that just looks awful to begin with because it's just a default list. And we want to float that up over here like a regular navigation on a site. So how would we go about doing that? So we've got our row here. We've got our header now that we've made, so that way this has got the background all the way across. And this is nice. We can change this to whatever color we want, right? And we could even add textures here. And our content is always inside of our nice, neat little grid. So I don't know why that was always so challenging to wrap my head around starting out, but ever since kind of seeing how that's put together, it just makes it nice to kind of visualize some other pages and some other possibilities and things to do. So again, we've got our header there, we've got our row, and what's nice about our row is there's really not much to it. We've just got our max width, we've got some padding, and we're centering all of our row content on the page, right? But now we can add some other display types to make this function differently. And what we do is we don't really actually alter that on our row class. That's what's so nice about classes in CSS is we can add lots of different types. So for this case, we're going to use a methodology named Ben, and we're going to get way more into that. But essentially what you do is you've got your block, you've got your element, and then a modifier. And this is our block. It's the parent element. And inside of this parent, all these are considered children. So all of our children elements are going to be named like this. So we'll have a header with 2 underscores, and we can call this, maybe it's our header row. Okay. So we can take that, come over here, drop it right below. So now we've got our header row, and it's going to have unique styles, even though it's on the same, here's our global row. We can change and kind of modify how this row behaves. So what we're going to do, we're going to set a very specific display type. Maybe just to start out, why don't we just show you what flex looks like? So we've got flex. Now that immediately kicks it over, but we don't have too much control. It just kind of floats them all horizontally on the same axis or the same line. So we can do things like give that spacing and whatnot, but one of the things I like to do is I like to use what's called CSS Grid. Okay, so we can give it a grid, and you can see how it's kind of drawn those lines. But what we need to do is actually specify some columns so we know what, or so we can fit each of these children into columns, because this is a child and this is a child here. So do one FR, one FR. In fact, if we're looking at this logo more closely, if I can get that pulled up, maybe we'll turn off our grid here for a second. So this is what I was kind of hoping for. I just want to get the width here. So right here we can see that the width of just our text for our logo is about 155 pixels wide. So what we can do is come back here, turn this on, and then for this first column, why don't we just set that to be like 160 pixels, just so it's a little bit wider than that text. And then now we've kind of got our grid in place. So we've got the 2-column grid. And then what we'll do is we'll spread out this list in the next video and kind of style this up. But what I'd like to do right now, rather than get into all this CSS, I think it would be more beneficial to show you some learning resources that probably do a lot better job than I could just listening to me randomly explain these things. So the first one is called it's called Flexbox Froggie. Highly recommend this site. So it's super neat. The objective is to get this little frog guy onto the lily pad. So it teaches you all these concepts here. There's about 24 levels, and they get a little bit harder as you go, but it's extremely fun, and especially if you're into this programming stuff, highly suggest that. The next one, it's actually kind of made by the same people here. It's called CSS Grid Garden. Very similar concept. The whole point of this is to water the plants, so you get the plants in the water or vice versa. I can't remember. But it's really cool, really neat. It's super interactive. And I learned a ton doing that. That's some great free resources. Another one's called Flexbox Zombies. And this guy named Dave Geddes, or Geddes, sorry, shoot, I forgot how to say his name. I can't remember. Gedsky. Okay, so I was totally wrong. No, it is Geddes. Okay, so sorry, Dave, I butchered your last name, but super awesome guy. I really like him. He's been very helpful. I've signed up for one of his other courses, but this one's free. It's Flexbox Zombies. Does a really excellent job just getting that kind of repetitive typing in and getting familiar with all these properties. Really excellent work. I really look up to this guy. So there's that. Another great resource too, I'll show you really quickly. It's called Can I Use? Because a lot of people think, well, is this property that I'm trying to use, such as like Grid, is that supported? So you just come here to call Can I Use, search for what you're trying to use, and you can see what browsers, the properties that you're using on your website, if that's going to work across the board, or if you need to provide different support. So I hope you found that helpful. We'll get into, I want to try to keep these videos more short and concise and get to the point, but I tend to talk a lot, so I'm trying not to do that, but hopefully you'll still stick around and find it interesting. And yeah, maybe the next video, who knows what we'll pull out and show on camera. So we'll see. Of course, weapons related. So alrighty, okay, talk with you later. Bye.